Today I'll be talking about a few trends and challenges in the fintech industry. Okay, and this is in light of certain recent changes that have occurred in the market. Okay, and I'm not talking just about the fintech market, but about or in society in general. I'm saying. Okay, we have been discussing these trends for some time, but I think the last discussion we had on the topic was, I would say, 2 or 3 months back. Okay, so I felt the need to revisit this topic and see if things have changed. And I have noticed certain changes which I believe are very important. Okay, so this is what I'll be walking you through today. So first, a little bit on buy now pay later, and then a part on SMB customers. So buy now pay later, right? We were discussing. In fact, we had one session on buy now pay later where I was saying what companies are involved in the space, what kind of business models they follow, and so on. Okay, but right now it seems companies are realizing that buy now pay later is becoming a kind of problem. Okay, and then in one of the other sessions, I had also mentioned that many of the fintech companies are targeting SMB customers because that's where the market is not saturated. That's where they have a lot of opportunity and potential to grow. But again, it seems that they are now realizing, after a few months of doing this, they're now realizing that this might not really be sustainable. So I got an example for that, which I'll be walking through. And then the third point, payment localization. Not a problem per se, but a challenge which companies in the fintech space need to surmount today. And that is the third point. The fourth point is more India specific. Okay, I'll talk about that in detail. And then the fifth point is on the changing regulatory environment, which is kind of making things a bit tough for the payment companies. So the regulations that are coming in are good. They are necessary from the customer's point of view. It is just that the payment companies are finding it a bit difficult to navigate certain challenges here. So I will first talk about the buy now pay later point. So this buy now pay later has been around for some time now, but of late there has been a feeling that this buy now pay later is a bubble that is about to burst. Okay. If you look at the second half of 2021, a lot of acquisitions by big players in this space. So PayPal acquired a company, Payd, and then Goldman Sachs acquired GreenSky, Square acquired Afterpay. So all of these companies are the Payd, GreenSky, and Afterpay. All of these are buy now pay later companies, which were acquired by certain other financial services giants for high sums of money, because at that point of time, these big firms realized that buy now pay later is a very key market for us, and that's the next big thing, and so on. But then, certain statistics do indicate that. So that if you look at the third point, 2.7 billion pounds was spent on buy now pay later transactions in 2020, and that more than doubled to 5.7 billion in 2021. Okay, but as a result of all this heavy spending on buy now pay later, people started realizing certain things of late. Okay, so that is what I mentioned in the next point. 25% of UK adult consumers who have used buy now pay later did not pay on time. Okay, and then 33% of the consumers between ages 18 to 34 did not pay on time. Okay, and then there is this Swedish company called Klarna, another fintech and buy now pay later company, and the default rate of the customers for this company has doubled in this time. Okay. So it looks very easy, it looks very simple thing, right? You just buy things on a kind of a credit, and then you don't have to pay now. You can pay it whenever it's convenient for you. But what is happening is people just use that feature to get what they want, but they do not pay back. Okay, it is just like your loan default or the credit card payment default, but just that it is happening on a much larger scale. Because see, for getting a loan or for getting a credit card, you have a large number of checks that are in place, right? I mean, it's very difficult to get a loan. So there is a lot of KYC process that has to be followed, a lot of documents you have to submit, a lot of verification that has to be done, and only after everything is correct, the bank is going to give you a loan. But buy now pay later is not like that. I mean, the barriers to entry for the customer are very, very low, right? So that's why customers can avail this facility very easily. And then as a result of this, the facility is being extended to customers who are not really capable of paying that money, and that is why you see those statistics. 25% in UK did not pay, 33% in those age groups did not pay, and then the default rate is doubling. Okay, so initially buy now pay later seemed to be having a lot of promise, but now it seems this might cause a lot of trouble for the fintech companies. Let me move on. So this was the reason I was saying it. So companies not doing proper KYC and credit checks. Even the machine learning algorithm. So any fintech company, if you ask today, they'll say that we have this sophisticated state-of-the-art machine learning algorithms which will assess the credit worthiness of the customer. But again, from buy now pay later standpoint, there is not much data on the transaction behavior or the credit history of the customer, right? Especially for non-salaried individuals, and these are the individuals who are more likely to avail such buy now pay later schemes. Okay. So this is the reason why we are seeing that problem. And then the companies are also exploiting loopholes in the regulations, so they are under the radar of the regulatory authorities. Then one additional trend that is happening right now is that high household debt as a percentage of GDP is increasing. Okay. So if you look at the US right now, their inflation is at a 40-year high. Okay. The price of all the essential commodities is increasing very much. Right? So that leaves little room for consumers to spend money on other non-essential items. So in that context, they find this buy now pay later very easy. Okay, and they just buy stuff that they need, but at a later point in time, they are unable to pay the money back and they get into debt. Okay. So as a result of all that, you have certain new regulations coming in. So that's what I mentioned as the next point. In Sweden, the government has introduced a law to keep online merchants from featuring buy now pay later as the consumer's first choice, because they want to reduce the number of times customers avail this facility. Okay. And also the companies are also finding this business model unprofitable. Okay. It is not based on sound principles, and so this is basically like the e-commerce model, right? So how does the e-commerce company work? So so the main interaction happens between the buyer and the seller. The e-commerce company is just a facilitator, right? And for each transaction or for each purchase that is being made, the e-commerce company takes a cut, right? So the same thing happens here. So the buy now pay later company earns the transaction fees. For each transaction, it gets a fees from the merchant. And this model, they are finding it unprofitable and not sustainable. So looks like a gimmick, and initially it seemed to hold a lot of promise, but now several cracks are starting to appear. Any questions on this buy now pay later, or any other thoughts that you wish to share? Okay, let me go to the next one. So the next point is on the SMB customers, that is the small and medium businesses. So there is this fintech company called Brex, Silicon Valley company, and just a few days back, in fact, I think this happened like 4 or 5 days back. Okay. So they dropped thousands of SMB customers from their platform. They simply stopped servicing thousands of SMB customers. So this is another payments company like Paytm, that kind of thing. Okay. So they said that they will not serve SMB customers any longer. Okay. And they said that they will only serve startups with the venture capitalist funding. Okay. The reason for this is that the startup customers have become more demanding. Okay. Rather than just getting the payment processing service, they began to ask additional services from the company. So they wanted the company to help them control the expenses and hire cheaper international workers. So the nature or the demands of the from the services asked for by the startup companies started to increase, and the nature of those demands started to change. Okay. So this company found that it was no longer sustainable for them to serve two different markets, because the startup consumers have certain growth targets, they have certain business models, okay, and then this SMB companies have an entirely different business model and growth targets. Okay, so serving these two diverse markets requires two really diverse business strategies, and they found that it was not possible for them to operate with two different business strategies. Okay. And one other thing that they say, so this is a quotation from them, so they said that the operational costs, the fraud costs, and the risk cost made the SMB a poor segment. Okay. But this is kind of contradictory to what we saw a few months back, because many fintech companies were saying that the SMBs are the next big thing, that is where the growth potential is and so on. But here you have a company saying that for SMBs, the operational cost, the fraud cost, and the risk cost is very high, and it presents to them a very unfavorable business proposition. So as a result of this, this company has stopped servicing thousands of SMB customers. Now, is this a one-off case? Is it the case that only this company is incapable of doing it, or can other companies still sustain the business model with SMB customers? That is something that remains to be seen, and that is something that only time will tell. So let me move on to the next one. So the next point that I want to talk about is on the localization of payments. So now this comes in the context of the increasing levels of cross-border e-commerce that is happening. So customers in India want to buy stuff from the US, or customers in the US want to buy stuff from Europe and so on. Okay. So initially, many years back, if you see, now the scenario has changed a lot. It has improved a lot, I should say. But initially, if you see, if you want to buy something if you wanted to buy something from a US e-commerce website like eBay or anything, only PayPal or any other US-based credit card will be accepted. If you have an Indian credit or debit card, it will not be accepted. Even today, if you see, if you want to buy something from a US-based, website or US-based company, then they will not accept debit card payments. They will accept only credit card payments. Okay. And they will not accept any UPI or any other form of payment. Okay. So this is where the localization concept comes in. Okay. An additional reason why the localization is getting important is that the processing fees for the international transactions is forecast to increase. So that is what I mentioned. This second point, in the US, the fee charged by banks to merchants to process credit or debit card payments is forecasted to increase starting from next April, that is April 2023. And fees have already increased for transactions between UK and EU countries. So you have this thing called Brexit, right? So the UK has come out of the European Union. So as a result of this, anyone purchasing anything from UK, from any website or merchant in the EU, the transaction fees is going to go up. It has already gone up. Okay. And why is it going up? Because for these international transactions, the funds are sent across a network of corresponding banks, translated across different currencies, and in each step of the process, they have this anti-money laundering laws, and then the KYC standards. They have to do a lot of verification. So all of this incurs a large transaction processing fee. So the solution for this is that the merchants must partner with the payment service provider, which support local payment gateways. So that is what I was saying. So even if you are buying something from a US-based retailer, you should still have the option of paying by a debit card or a UPI or whatever. So for us as Indians, those are the local payment gateways, right? So maybe someone might be very comfortable enough in life to own a credit card which actually has the international transaction capability. But the majority of the Indian population, if you see, they will have the aspiration to buy something from the US, okay, and they will have the money as well. We have a growing middle class in our country, but they might not necessarily have the exact type of credit card or whatever with the international payments capability. So that is why, in order to attract these customers, the merchants should partner with the service provider who support the local payment gateways. So this is what we call as localization of payments. So what happens is the transactions will be routed through banks that are in the same region as the customer. This is on the localization of payments. Any questions until now? All right. So I'll move on to the next topic on the day, that is increasing regulatory scrutiny. So if you so you might have come across this news, or you might not have heard about it. So in 2021, what happened was the Indian government banned the issue of new MasterCard cards because MasterCard did not store the data in the Indian servers. So they stored the data outside of India, US or something like that. So this was against the law that we have regarding the localization of the payment data. So there's a law that has been rolled out by the Reserve Bank of India, which basically says any data stored by the payments company should be stored in the server which is geographically located in India. Okay, it should not go outside of India. So MasterCard was not compliant with this, and so the Indian government banned the issue of new MasterCards. So this happened to me, in fact, when I had to replace my debit card a couple of years back. I did not get I was initially having a MasterCard, but when I got the replaced debit card from the same bank, I was issued a Visa card. That was as a result of this rule. Maybe some of you might have come across the same thing in your personal experience. Okay. So one other thing that is happening, so a couple of slides back I told that in the US several companies are exploiting the loopholes in the regulations, right? That's happening in India as well. Many payment aggregators in India have started to monetize customer data by sharing it with the non-banking finance corporations. This non-banking finance corporation is basically, they don't have a banking license, okay, but still they can issue loans and so on. So you have a company, the insurance companies or the mutual fund companies, or the you have some companies like the Muthoot Finance or the Tata Capital or the Bajaj Finserv and so on, right? So these are all what we call as the non-banking financial corporations, NBFCs. Okay. And what is happening is the payment aggregators or the fintech companies in India are selling customer data to these NBFCs. So they do this because it gives them an extra source of revenue. Okay. So what the RBI has done is that it has mandated that the fintech companies in India should have a net worth of at least 25 crores by March 2023. This is to ensure that the barriers of entry for the fintech industry are high enough so that only the companies with the real capability to sustain their business are in the market. So any company which is not having enough money, which is just in the market to make some quick bucks, so that does not enter the market and cause harm to customers. So for that, the RBI has issued this mandate. Okay. And the increasing regulatory scrutiny is not something that is specific to India. In other countries also it is happening. So in the US, there is this board called as the Consumer Financial Protection Board. Okay. It has said that it will increase the scrutiny of big tech companies with regard to monetization, data harvesting, and other consumer protections. So what do you mean by big tech companies? So we have the companies like Google, Facebook, and Amazon, and so on, right? So it said, this board has said that it will increase the scrutiny of these companies because somehow this board feels that these companies are using customer data in an unethical manner. That is the reason. Okay. And it has also started inspecting the business models of buy now pay later companies. So, it's actually an interesting topic, this one, because the 21st century has given rise to so many new business models. Okay, or to be more specific, the internet has given rise to so many business models, and a lot of these business models are unsustainable and possibly even harmful. Okay, initially, you saw an explosion of so many companies with all of these new business models, but what is happening now is people are starting to feel the negative impacts of several of these things, and they're starting to take note and be alert. Okay? And that is why we have all these increasing regulations in the market today. Any questions? Let me move on. So the Rupee topic is something that is very specific to India, but again, it is an interesting topic. That is why I included it in today's slide. So this Rupee, if you see, it is a payment service system that was launched by the NPCI, that is the National Payments Corporation of India, in 2014. Okay. And it was launched with the aim of financial inclusion and homegrown payment and settlement infrastructure. Okay. So Rupee cards, I'm sure all of you will have come across. Okay. So until a few years back, we had, if it was a debit or credit card, then it has to be one of two. It has to be either Visa card or MasterCard. But now you can also see the Rupee cards. So Rupee is another payments processing platform like Visa and MasterCard, but it is a fully Indian platform. Okay. And all of the cards that have been issued under the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, so all the Jan Dhan accounts, we say, right? All of the people who are who did not come under the financial ecosystem until now, so they were given these Jan Dhan accounts, right? So all of them were also issued with a debit card, which is basically the Rupee card. It is not a Visa card or a MasterCard. And the biggest advantage of this Rupee card is that it is immune to any foreign sanction. So in the Russia-Ukraine war, you see, Russia had so they're still facing a lot of sanctions, right? Now all the companies have come out of Russia, and then Russia is out of the SWIFT system, and the regular payments like the Visa and the MasterCard. So due to the sanctions, none of those payments will work in Russia. Okay, but if you have this homegrown payment system like the Rupee, then no matter what sanctions are imposed, it will still work because it is fully Indian infrastructure. Okay, and currently Rupee, if you see, it holds a 34.5% market share of debit cards in India, and predominantly the market share has been achieved by the public sector banks, because most of the public sector banks, they have started issuing the Rupee cards now. So now since this has happened, the American companies have started saying that Rupee is hurting our growth prospects. So, but for us as Indians, I believe it is really important to have the homegrown payment system, and that is a really advantageous thing to have. And certain other advantages of Rupee are that the operating costs are lower for banks compared to using the Visa or the MasterCards. Okay. The reason for this being, there is no processing or transaction fees that is being passed on to the customers. Okay. At the same time, Rupee currently it is very strong in the debit card space. The credit card growth is something that they are yet to achieve. Okay. But they do have plans to grow the credit card customers and target high spending premium customers. And apart from the physical payment medium like cards, they are also working on contactless payment offerings via smartphones and smartwatches. So this as of now seems to hold a lot of promise. So yeah, that's what I had for today.